So while I'm looking and thinking, we've been excited for this day, and many of you have already met. I know Brother Josh and his family. So glad that so glad that they could be here today. Just okay. Glad that you could be here today. Sorry. Thank you, Austin. The restrooms are to my right, to your left. For those that are unaware, we have two restrooms in the basement as well. Austin and I were just talking about this a few minutes ago, and so there's the exits, and there's the exit. We don't have exit signs. We decided to make sure the insurance man doesn't come today, that maybe we get exit signs. So thankful that you could be here. This is something that we talked about, just something we'd like to start, maybe start a Saturday series of some type going forward, once a year, a couple times a year or something. So, and this seemed to be the right thing. Appreciate very much Brother Josh being with us and sharing with us not only his trip going to Egypt, but tying, if you will, some of the loose ends and the ideas behind it, and how it can help us going forward as children of God. So thank you, Brother Josh, for being with us today. Let's sing number 470. 470. Oh God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come, our shelter from the stormy blast, and our eternal home. Beneath the shadow of thy throne, thy saints have dwelt secure. Sufficient is thine arm alone, and our defense is sure. Before the hills in order stood, o'er earth receive her frame. From everlasting thou art God, through endless years the same. A thousand ages in thy sight are like an evening gone. Short as the watch that ends the night before the rising sun. Time like an ever-rolling stream bears all its sons away. They fly forgotten as a dream dies at the opening day. O God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come. Be thou our guard while life shall last, and our eternal home. We'll give Brother Josh all the time that he likes each hour, but we will plan on probably a 10-minute break or so. It just depends. If there's any questions that you'd like, maybe jot them down. If he has time, would like to answer those, fine. Otherwise, perhaps as the day goes on, leave it up to him. Josh.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for inviting me to come speak to you all. I really appreciate it, and this is the first time I've been to Blackwater, and I like y'all's building, and y'all are very friendly already. Thank you so much for this opportunity for me to serve you. I was able to bring my family, and so if you haven't met them, my lovely wife Katya, and my daughters Leah and Hannah, and my son Isaiah, thank you so much for having us. I was blessed to be able to go to Egypt last year. I went for 10 days. My wife went with me, and three of our members there in South Highway 5 Church of Christ went with us as well. It was a research trip. The picture that you see on the PowerPoint is one of the pictures we took. It's what's called the Karnak Temple, and each of the pharaohs were to contribute something to this temple or this temple area. And because of that, it is huge, and there's so much to see in that. There were literally thousands of pictures that we took. You will not be able to see all of them, but I'm going to give you the ones that are going to be relevant for the lessons this morning and for the rest of the sessions. My goal is not to just tell you how the trip went. Okay, my goal is to show you, well, what can we learn from Egypt, and how does that help us when it comes to the Bible? Egypt and the Bible are very closely related because the Bible talks about Egypt a lot. It talks about the pharaohs, talks about events that would happen in the times of the pharaohs. There was predictions of Egypt in their fall and the different punishments that they would receive. Israel was told different commands that would pertain to them and Egypt and the relationship. Well, with Egypt, they had idolatry. They had false gods. And that's what we're going to talk about. But before I do, let me just say very quickly who's all involved in all of this. The more missions, more discipleship missions, this is run by a brother named Jonathan Moore. And Jonathan Moore is a professor there at Freed-Hardeman, and he is the one that took us. He led us in this group. He taught us pretty much 24/7. I would say from the time that we woke up and the time we went to sleep, which was very late, we were always learning something. And so it wasn't a trip where it was just fun, although it was fun. It was not just for that. It was a lot of learning, and so we're blessed to learn so much from them. We went with a group of students, and I was one of the students. 7 students altogether, but there were also different instructors. Jonathan Moore, that's a picture of him and his wife Donna Moore, which handled a lot of the logistics of that trip. Romani, he was one of our tour guides, as well as Andrew. They helped us know where to go and where not to go. And also Dr. Richard Brumback. He is the director over the graduate program of Freed-Hardeman. And he was actually the director of the preaching school that I went to, and now he's the director of the graduate program that I'm in. And they all went and they taught us so much. And so there was a lot of learning going on in this. We had great company. Yes, that's me on a camel, and it's actually quite scary, especially since I'm a short guy, being high up there, and it's not as stable as you think. The students there are to the right on the top, but the full group, you have the full group that was there all together. Well, 7 of us students, plus the instructor, Jonathan Moore, Dr. Jonathan Moore, we all are working together to create a book that's going to come out in the middle of this year. Hopefully, if all works out, the middle of this year, there will be a book, and it will be published by Apologetics Press. And each one of us has a different topic that deals with Egypt in the Bible. And so there is so much more to the learning that I just will not be able to give to you, but that book will have that. That book will express so much and teach you so much. And so be praying for this work, that all works out. I will be talking about my chapter in the second session. But for now, look at this map, aerial view of Egypt. The red dots is where we went. Alexandria, which is on the coast of the Mediterranean. We went to a place called Tanis, which is around the site, or right next to the site where the Israelites would have been housed during their enslavement. We were able to go there. It's an active dig site, and so I'll talk about that a little later. And then we went to Cairo. Of course, there's so much to see in Cairo, especially the museums. But then we took a sleeper train all the way down here to Luxor. It was like a 12-hour train ride, and it was not the best train that one can be on, but it got us there, and we basically just, well, we were supposed to sleep all night, but it was kind of hard, but we made it. And so that's the area that we're covering. For this session, flee idolatry. Egypt's idolatry. How many gods did they have? That's a famous question. It depends on the pharaoh we're talking about. It depends on the time period we're talking about. As we're going to see in just a bit, there was a pharaoh who only had one god. But most of the time they had thousands of gods and goddesses that they created in their minds and attached these law systems to them. Overall, though, there were about 30 gods, 30 major gods, and then all these other gods that kind of helped them. And then some gods are really just like extensions of a god, and so it's like a part of a god. It's a whole big thing. The Egyptians would make these idols to represent their gods. It would make them have a connection to them. The gods would be connected to their image. Here we have these items that were found in the tomb of Amenhotep II. And in my second session, I'm going to explain why I have concluded that Amenhotep II is the pharaoh of the Exodus, and why that is even important to consider. But just for time's sake, for now, this is in the tomb of the one who witnessed the Israelites coming out of Egypt. And so these are the gods that would be basically disproven. Their power would be disproven, their existence would be disproven, and these are it. We have Wadjet in the middle. This is where, you know, the pharaoh would have that headdress on, and they'd have that snake on the top. That was actually a snake that would protect the pharaoh. We have here a vulture. Here is a big one. That's Hathor, the cow goddess, which we'll talk about when it comes to the Israelites. Mehet is another goddess. All these goddesses would protect the pharaoh while he's in his tomb. Little did he know that we were just going to go in there and take it all and put it in a museum, and then we just look at it and pay money. But they protected him in the afterlife, but that's just not what happened. When it comes to the plagues, these false gods and many others would be disproven. Their power would be lost or non-existent. And the awesome power of God is displayed in the 10 plagues. But it gets more fascinating. The plagues not only hurt the Egyptians physically, but they hurt their entire religious system. The plagues affected the specific areas of Egyptian life, and these specific areas were supposed to be taken care of by these gods. Well, where were they? They're not real. But it shows you how hard their hearts were, seeing that he was still buried with them. They still had this thinking that they were not going to let go of their gods, but God gave them plenty of reasons why they should have. We're going to look at several examples of gods and goddesses that were disproven by the plagues. Now, someone might come around and connect it to another god that was disproven, maybe read a book that talks about this other god that may have been disproven, and that's fine. Like I said, there's thousands of gods, and so all the gods kind of work together, really. There were some gods that, you know, there's group of them. They all had something to do with the Nile. Another one had something to do with the sun. And another group had something to do with just life in general. And so I'm just going to show you some of the major ones, just to help you out. Egypt and Israel would find out who the true God was. Remember, this was for Israel as well. Now, they did cry out to God. They remembered him and they asked for help, but they didn't fully understand that there's only one God and what he was capable of. And so it was for their learning as well. And so whenever they went back to idol worship that they learned in Egypt, God would get after them like little children. I did this for you and I told you that was wrong. Why did you do it again? And so they were without excuse. God would just point back to Egypt many times, and he would point back to the plagues. Don't you remember what I did? And so they were without excuse. Before the plagues happened, there was, that gives you kind of a scale of how big they were. Before the plagues happened, there was an introduction to the plagues. And it had to do with the snakes. Let's go ahead and turn to Exodus chapter 7 if you have your Bibles with you. Exodus chapter 7. Now, we're not going to read every single portion that talks about each plague. There is much reading to do, but we'll read some of it. Exodus chapter 7 and verse number 8. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, when Pharaoh speaks to you, saying, show a miracle for yourselves. Then you shall say to Aaron, take your rod and cast it before Pharaoh, and let it become a serpent. So this is chapter 7. We're reading, now we're in verse 10. So Moses and Aaron went in to Pharaoh, and they did so, just as the Lord commanded. And Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh and before his servants, and became a serpent. But Pharaoh also called the wise men and the sorcerers, so the magicians of Egypt. They also did in like manner with their enchantments. Where every man threw down his rod, and they became serpents. But Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods, and Pharaoh's heart grew hard, and he did not heed them as the Lord had said. Now, there are some things that Moses and Aaron were able to do, that the magicians were able to do, and questions come up of why that is, how can that be possible, did they have supernatural powers, it could be trickery, but what we have to understand is, when it comes to like the snake or other animals, they had gods for that. And so they would have already practiced on how to bring about a snake. The snake was put on the headdress, that's called the nemes, but the uraeus is that part that has the snake. It has two animals actually. It's for the northern and southern part of Egypt. It's the protectors of Pharaoh and the protectors of Egypt, and that's why it's right there in the front. Before the plagues happened, there was God proving that the Pharaoh had no protection. The snakes would be eaten up. Now, whether it was trickery or real power or whatever, they had already been skilled in trying to produce a snake. I mean, that it was sacred to them, and so they would do things like that. They were magicians. This was their trade. But what they could not do was have their rod, or rods, really, take over their rod. Could not eat that other one, but Aaron's rod did. It was able to eat all the other ones, and that should have been a wake-up call. Now, think about this. This was before anybody was hurt by the plagues. Really, it was just hurting their, well, it would have hurt their minds as far as their religious thinking, but nobody got hurt yet. It didn't have to go to the next step. It didn't have to go to the 10 plagues. They should have known already, hey, wait, Pharaoh has no protection. We better let these people go. But that just simply was not the case. His heart was hard. And it's not that he didn't believe it. It's just that he did not want to change. He was not going to let the people go. Plague number 1. The water was turned to blood. The water was turned to blood. Exodus chapter 7, verse 14. So the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh's heart is hard. He refuses to let the people go. Go to Pharaoh in the morning when he goes out to the water, and you shall stand by the river's bank to meet him. And the rod which was turned to a serpent you shall take in your hand, and you shall say to him, the Lord God of the Hebrews has sent me to you, saying, let my people go, that they may serve me in the wilderness, but indeed until you would not hear. Thus says the Lord, by this you shall know that I am the Lord. Behold, I will strike the waters which you are in the river with the rod that is in my hand, and they shall be turned to blood. It goes on to say about how the fish would die. It's going to affect life. Here's the Nile. And anything that is next to the Nile has life. If you look at an aerial map, you kind of see things start getting greener as you get closer to the water. And that's where animals are taken to go eat, because that's the place where things are growing. Everywhere else is just desert and sand and dirt and things like that, but here we have the Nile producing life. Well, gods that would be affected would be Hapi or Sobek Ra. Let me show you. Here is one, Sobek. He is right to the left, and he's next to the Pharaoh because he has favor with the Pharaoh. It showed two things. This god was one that helped out humanity, really liked humans, but also had a good relationship with the Pharaoh. Well, what about during the plague? Where were Sobek then? Now we have different gods that deal with the Nile. Hapi was another one that was more for the floods of the Nile whenever it overflowed and it gave life. Sobek was a combination of two gods. It was a crocodile and a sun. So you put those two things together, you got life with the crocodile with the water, and this is saying, hey, Pharaoh, where is Sobek Ra? And so they should have learned, but sadly, his mind was not going to change. His heart was hard. Plague number 2 comes, and there's frogs everywhere. Now, the magicians did this as well. Well, they're trained in this sort of thing, and the frogs are very sacred to them, and so they've already practiced on how to bring about frogs. Hecate was about rebirth and regeneration. To the left, that's a little figurine of Hecate. Well, imagine a lot of rebirths all around your house, a bunch of rebirths around your food and your clothes and just everywhere. Imagine the stink when the frogs begin to die. Now, I'm sure they did not want those things to be reborn. It was kind of ironic on how that worked out. So this frog that's about rebirth, they just want it gone. But his heart was hard. He did not heed. He did not let the people go. And so plague number 3 has to come. The dust is to lice. Now, I don't have a picture of lice. If indeed it was lice, it was some kind of a bug of some sort. But that's Egypt. That's all dust. Sand, dirt, something of that nature. Can you imagine all of that turning into lice? I mean, there's only one picture. I mean, that's basically how it looks out over there. All of that would have turned, and it would have been all over them. Well, the magicians gave up at this point. This is the time where they said, that is the finger of God. They couldn't do that. So it was getting more and more, harder, and to the point where it's impossible. We can't do that. We've never done anything like that. This is the finger of God. But they weren't talking about their gods. Their gods were non-existent. They weren't helping out. When they said this is the finger of God, they were talking about Jehovah, the God of the Hebrews. This is the finger of God. This is his finger. They had in their minds, this is not only God, the God they're talking about, but this is just his finger. Now, Geb, he was the earth god. Geb was always pictured in a way where he was lying on the floor. Some pictures really have him looking like he's almost naked, so I don't have a picture of him. But he's like lying on the ground because he He covers the earth. He's the God of the earth. Well, where was he? Where was he when the earth turned against the Egyptians? Well, he was not there. But his heart was hard. And so we have plague number 4, the flies, the swarms. Now, I put swarms there because really the word there doesn't necessarily have to mean flies. It just says swarms. So it was some kind of bug. Now, people will say flies and translations will put flies because whenever the Hebrew Bible was changed to the Greek language, which is what we call the Septuagint will put in place of swarms, they'll put the dog fly. And so somehow, some way, the translator got wind of what type of animal this was, or whatever happened, that's what was translated. Well, if this is true, it would have been more than just an annoyance. I don't know, do y'all know anything about dog flies? Real big in Florida if you ever go over there. Let me just read you something from the Florida Department of Agriculture. Quote, both male and female adults prefer to take blood from large animals, but if their normal hosts are not available, they will feed on nectar for a time and then on anything that is warm and has blood. This is why they became a problem for humans. Their bite is painful, but usually doesn't result in reactions like those of yellow flies or sand flies. End quote. Now they're writing that, they're not thinking about the plagues, they're not thinking about anything Bible related, they're just telling you how dog flies are. And if it is true, the Septuagint, if it is true that it was a dog fly, it would have been painful for them. Interestingly, in Psalm 78, there in verse 45, I'll just read it for you. Psalm 78:45. He sent swarms of flies among them, which devoured them, and frogs, which destroyed them. And so think about that. Flies that were not just an annoyance, but they devoured them. So if it was a dog fly or something of that nature, it would have been biting them. But his heart was hard. He would not. Even though there is this different gods, really. They got Kepri. You know, you've seen the scarab beetle. It's represented in that way. There's different gods for different bugs and things like that. Where were they? Where were they? The scarab beetle is known for transformational power, but there was nothing there. Plague number 5 will come. Death of the livestock. Death of the livestock. Now I don't have a picture of a dead cow, but just picture a dead cow, okay? What I really want you to focus on here is the 2 gods that were found in Amenhotep II's tomb, and it was the gods that were really disproven in this plague, plague number 5. Hathor, that is a big god, it's a cow god. Now I know it's small in relation right here, but there's all sorts of sizes. I mean, we saw a huge statue of Hathor. I mean, they come in all sizes. But here's Mehet Wadet. They also take care of the sky and the heavens. They take care of the pharaoh. They represent the animals, obviously, because they're cows. And this was one that Israel needed to remember. But they would soon forget. This was the goddess that they would eventually go back to. Plague number 6, because his heart was still hard, we go to plague number 6, which was the boils. Now, in Exodus chapter 9, verses 8 through 12, this is where we read about it. Exodus chapter 9, verse 8 through 12. So the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, take for yourselves handfuls of ashes from a furnace, and let Moses scatter it toward the heavens in the sight of Pharaoh. And it will become fine dust in all the land of Egypt, and it will cause boils that break out in sores on man and beast throughout all the land of Egypt. Then they took ashes from the furnace and stood before Pharaoh. And Moses scattered them toward heaven, and they caused boils that broke out in sores on man and beast. And the magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils, For the boils were on the magicians and on all the Egyptians. But, that sad word right there, but the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and he did not heed them, just as the Lord had spoken to Moses. Here we have a god. His name is Thoth. Now, this is from the Book of the Dead. We saw this laid out for us. A certain part of it, there's Thoth. And Thoth is a scribe in the underworld. Gods have different functions and different things. But since he's a scribe, he has a lot of medical knowledge. He's written it down, he knows it, he's memorized it. Kind of like the scribes, the Pharisees. The scribes knew the law because they're writing it and they're thinking about it. And so the scribes are people who have a lot of knowledge as well. Well, he had a lot of knowledge of medicine. And the ancients, they believed, well, Thoth will take care of us, he will heal us. But not only him, there was also Sekhmet, goddess of healing. There was also Isis, goddess of healing. Nephthys, goddess of health. You see, they had a different group of gods that will handle all the health aspects of people. You need healing, go to one of them, and they'll help. Where were they? Where were they? They didn't help. Now, we were able to see the Pharaoh of the Exodus, Amenhotep II. I saw his mummified body. Unfortunately, that was a certain place where they were very strict on picture taking. Now, other places, you could take pictures, different mummies and things like that, but this particular place that had a good number of pharaohs, they did not allow any cameras, and so I was not able to. But you can look it up. I'm sure there's pictures somehow, some way in other places. And just look at Amenhotep II, his body and how it looks. And what you're going to notice is there are raised bumps all over his body. And you contrast that to all the other pharaohs and their mummified bodies, that's not a thing. Now, people are still trying to figure out why that was, what was his skin condition. I have concluded, well, that's talking about the plague of boils. We're not talking about little boils, you get a little tiny one here. We're talking about things that were painful all over. This was all over them, their animals, all over all these people. It's very likely, let's just put it that way, that was because of the plague. But his heart was hard. Even though he would have to endure such pain, plague number 7 had to happen. Hail and fire. There is a sky goddess named Nut. And if you're looking at different tombs, you got the top of it where you see Nut kind of going over the sky. Different pictures show this woman over, and inside of her is all these stars, and so she's the sky. Shu, the calming god of the atmosphere. We have Set. Isis also does this. Osiris and others. Where were they? Hail and fire coming down at the same time. Fire, most likely talking about lightning, but hail and fire that was enough to shake them, or at least it should have. But plague number 8 had to happen. Locusts. Locusts. We find that in Exodus chapter 10, verses 1 through 20. So there's much to say on that. The Bible has much to say about that particular plague. But here we have grain gods, and I'll just give you some of them. Neper, Nepri, Henan, Renuttit, Isis, Set. These are gods that were responsible for taking care of the nation's crops. Now, I don't expect you to remember all those names, but I want you to get that they had all these gods that would protect what they had. It wasn't just one, it was a group of them. And yet they were non-existent. They weren't there to help whenever the true God was giving them these things. But his heart was still hard, and so plague number 9 had to come. Darkness. Now, I know this is not a slide of darkness, okay? Well, I'm showing you the sun because they worship the sun. It was a god to them. Now, when we were there, you can look at the sun. not like here, you hurt your eyes, but over there, there's a cloud of dust that just really covers everywhere you go there. I mean, the dust is just constantly in the air, and so it looks like it's foggy, but it's not. And so it covers the sun just right. And as you're looking at it like that, that's how you can look at the sun over there. And so it makes sense. It's not right, but it makes sense why they made a god as the sun, because they could just stare at it and think about things, and it looks majestic when you're there, because you're looking at it, and it looks pretty neat with the blanket of dust that's over it. And so, to some level, it's understandable why they would choose a big god that would be the sun. Well, sun god was Ra. Sun god was Ra, which is one of the more famous ones. This is taken out of the temple of Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut was the one who found baby Moses. Well, this is her temple. And here we have the god Ra. There's a sun on top of his head, kind of like a bird face with a human body. That's usually what they did. They put the animal head on a human body to show, they have this connection with humanity, but they also have some different qualities that the animal would have, but then the sun disk. And so this was a god that had light. If anybody could stop the darkness from happening, it would be Ra. Where was Ra? Plague number 10, firstborn deaths. Now, I'm not giving you a picture of a dead baby. You can imagine that yourself. But I want to give you what was affected. A picture of Pharaoh himself. You see, Pharaoh was what we call a demigod, as we say today. Half human, half God. Has connections to other gods, but still divine, sacred himself. And the one that would be next in his line was still a Pharaoh blood. And so who can really do any harm to the pharaohs? Now, if you look at King Tut, Tutankhamun, he died around 19, and so it does happen. They knew that pharaohs, eventually would die, but in their minds, there wasn't another god that could hurt the pharaoh. If they were going to die, they were going to just die by natural means or whatever. But surely a god of the Hebrews would not do this. Pharaoh would be the aim here. And this was the one where he said, all right, you all can go. Because it struck right at his rule and his son. So what this tells us is God was not doing fantastic things just because he was bored. Okay? He wasn't trying to entertain people. He brought the plagues to prove that he was God. He was the true God. He held power. And it was to disprove the entire Egyptian religion. For Israel, they left idolatry until they got to Mount Sinai. There, they would have to learn the hard way again. For Egypt, they did not leave their pantheon of gods, at least not right away. There would come a Pharaoh not long after these events who took these things seriously. It wasn't the Pharaoh of the Exodus, because he would soon change his mind and go after them. It wouldn't be the next one or the next one. It would be the next one after that, Akhenaten. In the Museum of Cairo, there is housed this artifact right here. It's a big statue. I'm probably maybe right here in height, so it's really huge. This is Akhenaten. He looks different than what you normally see in pictures of pharaohs. Here we have another one, just for comparison. Thutmose III, you see how the pharaohs are always pictured like this with perfect body, or at least a type of body that is has no problems, nothing wrong with it. It's it's power and strength and always going forward with their, you see their leg, how it's going forward. That's showing how there's movement with them. They still have life. They still are moving on. They still have power. They still have ability, even though they're dead. The statue's representing that. We don't see that here. Actually, we see more what almost looks like a woman's body with big hips. Not to say that all women have big hips, okay? I'm just saying, like, you know, it happens sometimes. But here, it's almost like a feminine type body, and the face is elongated. Now, some have tried to say, well, you know, because of that, he had some kind of deformity, his body just didn't look right, and so they try to mimic that. Well, that's not the case, because you look at the different mummies and how they would have looked, and that wasn't really their aim on trying to make it look like them. They were trying to capture the power that they had, the strength and the moving forward, and also the likely mummy that we have of Akhenaten doesn't even look like that. So there was a different purpose for this. Akhenaten, here's another one, and he has this famous poem that he has where he's talking about this one God. Akhenaten is important for us to consider because he believed in monotheism, which is basically the belief in one God. And everyone would hate him for it. Everybody. His God that he chose was Aten. He called him Aten. And Aten had these hands that would come down. They're like rays from the sun. This sun god, it wasn't Ra, it was Aten. He chose another name. And the rays would come down and the hands would give people life. Well, there was times where Akhenaten's hand would be kind of holding or touching the hands from those rays. And he told people there's only one God. And he's in the sky. And he gives everybody life. He's the only God that we should worship. Now, some would try to say that this was a political move. But really, there's no room to say that because you think about what we just went over, the plagues and all that. Can you imagine telling all of Egypt, you priests over there that deal with all these gods and the ceremonies and the rituals and sacrifices, you all are fired? Can you imagine telling the craftsmen who make all the idols and the stone sculptures and all that, you're fired? There's only one God. What would he be saying about the past generations that goes back thousands of years? It's part of their culture. It's ingrained in their minds. And he's telling them, we've all been wrong this whole time. There's only one God. This and more would drastically alter the lifestyle of every Egyptian. It would be the biggest political mistake in Egyptian history. And that's what he did. Why did he do it? Akhenaten was the great-grandson of Amenhotep II. Amenhotep II was the pharaoh of the Exodus. We'll talk about that in the next section. But the plagues were not recorded by Amenhotep. Of course, they don't write down the failures, okay? They only put down their victories. But they never forgot. They will tell the children, this is what happened. We're not going to write it down, but we remember. But Mom, why is your skin like that? Oh, well, because there was a big plague that happened. The Hebrews, their God is they would have remembered. The plagues may have not been recorded, but it makes sense. It is likely that Akhenaten saw the stubborn sins of his fathers, and people would have still talked about the event, especially the older men who remembered such wars. Akhenaten was always different than all the other pharaohs. He was not, it seemed like he was not as prideful, based on his not wanting to present his looks. It was just more of, here's a body that gives life. It's more connected to love and graciousness and things like that. This might be a little hard to see, but here's a relief that's made out of gold, and it has these lines coming down. Those are the rays of the sun, and at the end are different hands, and then the hands that are reaching forward. This is the life giving force of this one God. And here we have Akhenaten, something else that he would do that no other pharaoh would do. He was known as this family man. You look at all the other archaeological materials and writings and pictures and sculptures. You don't see pharaohs in their family. They're not pictured as family men. I mean, they had families, but that wasn't that wasn't something they promoted. Akhenaten said, "I want you to see my family." One of his sons would be King Tutankhamun, which after Akhenaten died, and then King Tut would come, that was it. They went back to worshiping all the other gods like before. So they would go back into their error. But Akhenaten, he's there with his wife. You might know her as Nefertiti. That's a common or a famous one. He's with his children, maybe hard to see. There is Aten, the one God with the rays coming down, giving them life, showing them love. Akhenaten was clearly different than all the other ones. Egypt would go straight back into their errors, yes. There is a papyrus list that is found that has details that really sound like the plagues. Now, I do say that there are no historical records that really say, hey, this is what happened to us, and they list everything like the Bible. But there is one that we really need to consider, and it's this Admonitions of an Egyptian Sage. That's what it's called. It is a sad poem it's made to the All-Lord, as it says, which may be that sun god. And it speaks of, and here's just a list of things that this papyrus from Egypt says. It speaks of the river being turned to blood, pestilence, grain destroyed, disease causing physical disfigurement, prevalence of death, mourning throughout the land, rebellion against Ra, the sun god, the death of children, the authority of the Pharaoh being lost, the gods of Egypt being ineffective and losing the battle, and jewelry being in possession of the slaves. That was all in this, it's written in like this poetical form. It's like poetry. And because of that, scholars will say, well, no, this is not a historical document because it's put in poetry, it's just a poem, and therefore it's fiction. I would disagree because, well, the Bible has real history put in poetical form, but they'll say the same thing about the Bible. But the point is, there are American wars that people will put poems to, and they'll base it on historical facts. It's just what people do. And so, the only thing is that as far as the timing, it's hard to place where this particular papyrus belongs in the timeline. Some say it was before the Exodus, some say right after, some say right at. It's extremely interesting, though, that the combination of details coincide with what the Bible says. If it connects, it shows that the people, they did not forget. They didn't forget. What are lessons for us? The Bible stands true on what it teaches. This is just the edge of the mountain when it comes to the evidence for the Exodus. Now, you step back. I know the Bible is enough to prove the plagues happened. Yes. I'm not trying to discredit the Bible as if we do need more just to say it's true. That's not what I'm saying. The Bible does stand true, and it stands true by itself. It can prove its own self. However, we are not to think that the evidence that lies outside of it, we can't do anything with it. We can't. Think about the atheists and skeptics who are out there who will not come near the Bible because they already have in their minds that this is fake, that this is all just false information written by men, and they came up with their own ideals. But if we were to show them the evidence out here, I'm not saying that should be what convicts them and causes them to be converted or whatever, but it should get them closer to the Bible. You see, there's a roadblock here, and they don't want to come to the Bible. Well, you need to take away that roadblock, and you show them the archaeological evidence. And when you do that, then they'll come to the Bible and consider it. Okay, well, what does the Bible have to say about my salvation then? Then the Word will convict them. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing of the Word of God. But they're not going to want to come near the Word if they have those roadblocks. So that's where archaeology really helps. For us, the evidence is still good because, well, we already have confidence in this. The evidence is just going to strengthen that confidence, and it also helps us out with some interpretation of some details we might not know. It's good to know the historical background of these things so that we can get an even bigger picture of what was going on. I mean, you read about the plagues, and you're already thinking, this is great power from God. But looking at the archaeology, we'll also add that, well, God was also going against their gods. So that brings us to the second lesson that we have. God is the only God. Akhenaten may not have fully grasped everything about the true God, about Jehovah, but he knew something was wrong. He just knew this religion that we have with all these gods, this polytheism we have, it's just not right. And he would have gone against everybody, the priests, the craftsmen, the people of that day, their ancestors, but he said something is wrong. Well, we're taught in the Bible that we only have one God. James chapter 2 and verse 19, and he is the God of light, 1 John chapter 2 and verse 15. He is the giver of life, 1 John chapter 5 and verse 12. And those whom God chooses, he changes their names. Of course, chooses in, you've got to qualify that in different ways. Not that he chooses against people's will, but he has chosen a kind of people. And those who choose to be part of that and allow God to add them to the church, they have their names changed. Their names are Christians. The church. We have been given that name. And he is the one that is benevolent towards us. He is the God of light that has given us life. Third, as Christians, we are to flee idolatry. We are to flee idolatry. In Galatians chapter 5, verse 19 through 21, here we have the same command. There's only one God, and since there's only one God, there is no room to worship idols. We should only worship God. Now, you might be saying, well, we don't have that problem here where we have, different figures that people make and then we worship them. Now, it is a thing in other countries, so it does happen today. But what about here in America? Isn't there another way that idolatry can be committed? It doesn't have to be the making of actual idols like they did back then, Acts chapter 17 and so on. But I want you to look at Colossians chapter 3 and verse 5. Colossians chapter 3 and verse 5, as we're coming to a close for this session. Colossians chapter 3. Paul is speaking to the church that is in Colossae. In Colossians chapter 3 and verse 5, there Paul tells them, therefore, put to death your members which are on the earth. Verse 5, fornication, uncleanness, passion, evil desire, and covetousness, which is idolatry. Covetousness, it can come in different forms, but it always involves the self. Your desires. Either someone's going to covet by way of keeping what they have, like the man who made bigger barns so that no one could have it. Maybe desiring more than what they have. Maybe desire someone else's things. They're coveting even people. Maybe a man would covet someone's wife. They have a desire for more. And so really what it's getting down to is the idol is self. How can idolatry be done today with, aside from making an image out of wood or metal or something like that? Well, it's by looking at yourself and saying, self, what do you want? You want that? Go get it. And so you think about Egypt and how they had these false gods and these idols. what else did they have to create with these idols? They had to create law systems. And so this God requires these ceremonies. This God requires that you live like this. And so they had to live and worship in a way that was in accordance with these gods. Well, who's going to make those law systems? Well, since those gods are not real, it's going to be them. And so really, what was the biggest idol in Egypt? Same as today. Self. They were saying, Egypt, well, of course, Pharaoh, just put it Pharaoh. Pharaoh, what do you want? That's how it's going to be. And the people say, yeah, that sounds good. So Egypt is basically saying, this is how it's going to be. This is the law systems that's going to be connected to these gods. If we obey our desires, if that is what dictates our life, then we have made another God, which is not another. We would be no better than Pharaoh, who would not let Israel go. It would basically be like us saying, I'm not going to let myself go towards the Lord. I'm going to stay right here. My heart is going to be hard. So what? I'm going to stay here. I'm going to be shackled by Satan because it feels good over here. I don't want to go beyond my wants. That's idolatry. Well, we learn in the Bible that God is against idolatry, and we have seen how much He is against it. So hopefully this has been helpful to you, motivation to watch your life. Thank you so much. We'll go. This is the end of my session. Does anybody have any questions or comments? I think we got like maybe a minute or two. If not, that's okay. And you can ask me privately if you want. Or you can ask me at another session. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Josh.